Welcome to UnCeiling You, the podcast that helps ambitious professionals break through inner and outer ceilings, one powerful conversation at a time. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, and around here, we talk about visibility, leadership, and the kind of networking that doesn't feel fake. It feels aligned, because real influence starts when your presence matches your purpose. Today, we're talking about how to negotiate and network from alignment, not from confrontation. And joining me is someone who embodies that message beautifully, Khiara Cureton. Khiara is an executive, career, and wealth coach and founder of Anchor Co., where she helps ambitious mothers step into executive leadership, increase their earning potential, and build financial freedom without sacrificing personal life. With a background in operations and leadership and corporate strategy, Khiara knows firsthand what it's like to navigate executive spaces that weren't built for you and to advocate for your own worth anyway. Her passion is helping high-achieving women stop playing small, start earning their worth, and take up space, not just in salary conversations, but in rooms where leadership and wealth decisions are made. So if you've ever hesitated to ask for more or wondered how to align your ambition with your values, this episode is for you. So let's dive into my conversation with Khiara Cureton as we explore what alignment really looks like when your voice, your value, and your network finally match. Okay, here we are. So thank you so much, Khiara, for being with us. I really appreciate your expertise and helping women negotiate like a boss. And you help women negotiate like a boss, not just for salaries, but for the entire executive package. So what are some mindset shifts that you coach women to adopt when it comes to asking for more money or opportunity?
Thank you, Natalie. So excited to be here. The shift is this: negotiation is not confrontation. It's truly alignment. And I know we've been taught differently, but I coach women to see negotiation as a strategic alignment of their value that they're bringing into the role that they're about to step into. They're not begging. They're bringing their experience, accolades, and they're anchoring their ask and their overall impact in that particular role. So I remind my clients all of the time, you're not asking for more than what you deserve. You're asking for what's required of you to thrive, contribute, and to lead in that particular position. Lastly, what I always tell them, practice, 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 with your friends, with your partners, trusted colleagues, really lean on that trusted community of yours. And that's how you build that confidence to make the ask.
And I really appreciate the fact that you're saying, hey, it's in alignment with your values. And sometimes women have a hard time feeling like they're delivering value, or even they may feel like they're asking for too much, or they're ungrateful when they advocate for themselves. So how do you help women through that?
I just want to acknowledge that fear is very real. I mean, I still deal with a little bit of that today because we've been conditioned to be grateful for the seats, the spaces, the places that we're in, right? So we reframe that by advocating for yourself isn't selfish. It's modeling courage for those behind you, your family, your children. And I help clients create a really bold script with clear language that feels like them, right? That really reflects both their confidence and their overall standards. And what I like to often remind them is I feel like society makes us feel like bold has to be loud. It doesn't, but it does have to be heard.
Can you give me a story of someone who might have felt like they were too much, or they might have been grateful and you were able to help them through that, give them that script to help them move forward, and what happened in the end?
Yes, absolutely. So I had a client who was in a male-dominated marketing industry. And of course, she was the only in that space and interviewing. And I don't even think she had another woman in her interview process. So anyways, naturally, that made her feel like she had to shrink a little bit to fit in. Mm-hmm. And what I told her, I said, I always start with, let's take a pause. Let's get some clarity around this, right? Like, what are those feelings that are coming up for you? And why do you think they're coming up for you? Is it because I'm the only woman in the room? Is it because, I have 10 more years experience of these people? Like, what is it? So connecting those dots. And then I say, okay, let's respond to those objections, right? So let's take, for example, I'm the only woman in the room. Okay. But let's turn that into like what I call like a superpower, right? You being the only woman in the room, what are the different, perspectives, values that you bring, right? Let's script that into a language so that you have something to respond when you're feeling that way. And so she went in and actually had two interviews that went really, really well, and ultimately ended up not taking the role because she found another one that she felt a little bit more in alignment. But just that confidence alone to me was worth that part of our coaching.
Okay. And it's nice to really have options.
Yeah, listen, it is, especially in today's world. I mean, if you're going for an executive role, unless again, you're community or you know somebody, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, it could take up to 6 months. So it is really nice to have options.
Yeah. So you also coach women to stop playing small. And when they do feel the temptation to shrink, what brings up that urge? Like in your experience, what brings up the urge? Because you talked about this one woman who is feeling like she needed to shrink. What brings up the urge and how do you help your clients pull back to their full voice? And maybe give us an example.
So I know for me personally, it creeps in when I'm in spaces where I am the only, right? Only woman of color, or when I'm pitching something really big. And, with regards to my brand Anchor, and someone questions back, like, if moms even want what I have to offer, right? So it's that subtle, like what I say, whispering in your ear, like, are you sure energy? That other voice that's speaking to you. And for that moment, I mean, naturally, I think most of us, we want to shrink, right? To keep the peace or not to ruffle feathers or stay in what's familiar to us. So, what I do for myself and for my clients too is I just remember that playing small serves absolutely no one, not my son, not the next woman watching. So, what I say, I have a little ritual to myself that I say internally, something along the lines of like, shrinking doesn't make you more digestible. It makes you disappear. And people need more of you. People need your messaging. People need your boldness and the way you present in the world. So then I say that to myself, deep breath. And then, we move and then we pitch or we apply for the job, or I press send on the email because visibility truly is a discipline.
Really love that quote. Shrinking doesn't make you more digestible. It
Mhm.
just makes you disappear. I think we're going to have a picture with you and that quote. I love it. It's one I'm going to like repeat to myself over and
Yeah.
over.
I mean, truly, when you're in certain spaces and places and, people don't see you for your full self, you're just blending into the crowd and the sea of others.
Yeah. So what advice do you give to women who a woman who feels unseen or undervalued right now?
Absolutely. So I like to start with, I always tell my clients, most of them who are mothers, and I said, find like a pocket of 10 to 15 minutes in the day where it's truly you're by yourself, no partner, no dog, no children. And ask yourself this question: who am I waiting on to validate me and why? Right. So
Mhm.
really take some time, sit with that. It could be a little uncomfortable sometimes. And then when you're ready, decide that you're going to start to take up space, right? So be your own proof. Visibility truly starts when you stop needing that permission and start practicing that presence.
So it's interesting because now you're not shrinking. What you're doing is taking up space with your presence.
Yes, and you've got to it's gonna feel uncomfortable. We're not naturally, most of us anyway, are not naturally taught to show it that way. So again, you lean on that community again and practice.
You say women are stuck in the middle management, holding everything together, but not quite getting promoted. What's the first step to reposition yourself for executive leadership when you're already overwhelmed, especially with motherhood?
Yes, absolutely. So may be a little bit of repeat here, but again, it's that clarity. And that is the hardest part, right? Where
Mm.
do I want to be? Why do I want to be there? Where am I currently at? And what is the gap to get to the next step? You can't advocate for a promotion that you haven't named already. So I work with my clients to stop managing, all the small little tasks, and let's just pause for a second and start managing the overall trajectory of what this, journey looks like. And we have to think and approach it a little bit differently than we have been. So I help them clean up, their digital footprint. That means LinkedIn and their resumes, their overall narrative. Especially, they should not be asking you this in the interview, but if you happen to mention something about children, and they kind of sneakily ask, can you balance this? So really getting tight on your narrative and how you're going to communicate your value in addition to being a mother and how that makes you different and prepared for the role and their overall executive presence. And so we anchor again back to those values in their outcomes and not the effort.
So what if that sneaky question comes in? Can you give us an example of one thing that your clients had said?
Yeah. So one thing, you're referring to like how if you're a mother and that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, I know this sounds so silly, but I'm like, listen, you're already an executive. You are managing family calendars and your own. You're negotiating with your children about eating fruit snacks at 7 a.m. You know, we really have to change how we're looking at executive presence, right? It's not just you're at work for 10 hours a day at the same company for 50 years. Like it's so different. And so when you're able to articulate your own personal skill set and values, it just becomes so much easier to respond to that question.
So what role do meaningful relationships like sponsors or peer allies play in this whole process?
Big time. So relationships, in my opinion, are truly the overall cheat code. Your performance will get you noticed, but your people will get you promoted, right? So again, to your point, that's your sponsors, your allies, your peer accountability groups and partners. They remind you of who you are and what you're capable of when that doubt really starts to get loud. And what I love most is that they have the ability to open rooms that and doors that you didn't even know existed. So if you're overwhelmed, easier said than done, but don't isolate, right? Be very strategic and ask like, who sees my potential and who has influence to open, some doors. A very quick professional story of my own. I had a professional mentor actually is what led me to my first executive role. I had reached out to him via LinkedIn. I think he was at the beach. So he like responded a couple days later. I sent over my resume that evening after we spoke, and literally 4 hours later, it was like late because I remember having to like figure out what to do with my son and dinner. I was talking to that COO at 7 p.m. that night.
Hmm.
And so it's literally all because of the relationship. We had worked together 13 years prior. So it was even a long time ago. So all that to say is that really cultivate your relationships, lean on your relationships, personal and professional, and they can open doors fairly quickly as well.
Yeah, that's the wonderful thing. I have some professional relationships that I know I haven't spoken to for years and years. However, if I picked up the phone, I know they would listen, and it would be as if we, talked last yesterday.
And yeah, same thing as friendships, but professional relationships as well. I think you'll see it a lot more in professional relationships, but you don't have to talk every day, right? If you all had a meaningful, professional relationship, you'll be surprised that you can reach back out and open that door 5, 10, 15 years later.
Yes, and the key is to consistently bring value
Yeah,
based on your values.
exactly. Exactly.
So, motherhood sparked the birth of Anchor Co. and changed the way that you saw ambition. What did that experience teach you about the balance between career goals and personal values?
Sure. So, yes, motherhood was and still is to this day a mirror, right? It is literally holding up a mirror to myself. Am I living the way I want to? Am I in alignment with my values and my goals? And at that time, prior to starting Anchor, I realized I didn't want a life where I had to choose between ambition, or ambition would cost me my weekends or, my presence at home. So, as you mentioned, Anchor was born. And I decided I didn't want to choose anymore. I wanted both. Like I've always naturally been an ambitious woman. I mean, I begged my mother to work at the age of 14. I always liked that sense of kind of having my own. And so I wanted alignment. And so now what I do is I really help women to once see that that is a possibility, right? We don't have to live in the narrative of you have to choose, you have to strip yourself of everything, your desires, your interests when you become a mother. And I help them design careers that feel like more of an extension of who they are.
Here's something I've learned watching incredible women rise and stall in their careers. The biggest gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't talent. It's the gap between knowing what you need and asking for it. For example, 2 candidates, 2 identical jobs, 2 different product lines, same title, same responsibility, same starting offer. One offer went to a man, the other to a woman. The man asked for more, the woman didn't. The man got more. And later, the hiring manager told me that she was actually more talented. She just didn't ask. That story isn't really about money. It's about alignment. Because every time we stay silent about our workload, our recognition, our time, even the need for rest, we drift further away from alignment with who we are. Asking isn't confrontation, it's collaboration. It's saying, here's what I need to lead well, to live well, to stay whole. Sometimes the ask is for a raise. Sometimes it's for flexibility. Sometimes it's for recognition, for help, mentorship, or just breathing room. Sometimes it's even asking your team for honesty, your partner for support, your boss for space to think, or for you to stop settling. Because shrinking doesn't make you easier to work with, it just makes you disappear. Real alignment is when your voice reflects your value without apology. That story still sticks with me even to today because it's proof. Asking isn't selfish. It's how alignment begins.
Are again showing up in those values, your bold personality and not escaping from who they're becoming, right? So that is kind of how, I anchor. And the more and more I talk about it and share my story with others, I'm like, wow, it has truly been powerful.
I could see that. So how do you help your clients shed the guilt and step both into ambition and motherhood with confidence?
Yes, another hard one here. But what I do is I lovingly challenge my clients with the myth that ambition makes you absent, right? That's again, I feel like people see ambition and absence as synonymous, and it's not. Your children or your family are not harmed by your goals. You're inspiring them. Like, what beautiful example are you setting for them? And another thing that I tell myself personally is I'm going to do all the things for my son now, but in a couple of years, I mean, I got a long time, maybe 14, 15 years, he's going to be his own big boy and go off and do his own thing. So, what am I going to have for myself? So, I just like to share that. But I help women reconnect to, again, their why, not just for their family, not for the title, but for themselves. And we turn that guilt into strategy. A lot of the objections about the guilt or not having time, I really like to let the client name it and then really create a strategy to face that. Because again, presence it's truly a practice. It's not a performance for others. You don't have to show up to everything. If you do want to be this ambitious executive, and sometimes you may have to miss a recital or a soccer game, and that's okay.
Yeah. I know with my daughter, it was kind of interesting. We adopted her when she was 6 years old. And when we adopted her from China, and she was actually from the best orphanage in China. And what they did at this orphanage is they made sure she was in a foster family, and she was in the same foster family from the age of like 1.5. So that foster family, the mom and the dad were her mom and dad until we adopted her. So then when we adopted her, her mom was the stay-at-home mom and her dad worked. And then when she came to us, I was the worker and dad was the stay-at-home mom. It flipped. It took a little bit for her to get used to that.
Sure.
Yeah. And I would say that there were some times when she's like, Mom, why do you have to work so hard?
But I think, when I think that's a wonderful question, right? And so, I mean, I get the same, mine is 4. I get the same question. You have to go to work. I mean, he's saying every day, right? And I'm like, well, Mom, do you want the Hot Wheels cars? And I just really sit and I think if you have a conversation and make it age appropriate to their level, right? 6 is a little different than 4, better understanding at 6, and you connect them and let them see you work,
Yeah.
And then I think it just helps to connect the dots of why we work and so forth. So I absolutely love when children, that's the beautiful thing about children. They're curious and they will ask you anything and everything. And it really forces you to stop in your tracks and come up with an appropriate answer, right? So
yeah. And well, and for me to be in alignment, I actually got a position where I get to work out of the house. I was able to drop her off from school. When she came home, I was there. And then when it came to studying, it's like, here, honey, here's a spot at my desk.
Yes.
Right next to me. You could do your homework and we're together.
I love that. It's so funny. My son starts kindergarten this year, and I was actually thinking in my office to get a desk that literally would sit next to mine because school ends a lot earlier than daycare. And I love that. So that confirms that my idea is a good one.
Yeah, it worked for her. I have to say this one funny story. There were times though, like I would be on a conference call and she didn't want her little face to be shown. And one time she tried to walk underneath the camera and the whole, of course, everybody in my organization knew her. And so they could see her little butt
Yeah.
in the camera. And one of the ladies on the other side of the camera is like, Megan, we could see you. And then she pops up like eyes wide. It was the funniest thing.
Yeah, but I think you bring up a good point that made me think about as well. For that, some of the things that some of my clients think through is an organization that even allows that, right? That's like they think it's funny. It's not like, why is that child in the camera? It's like, hey, we see you. You're part of the family. And again, that alignment, right? Is that company in alignment with your values and how you want to show up? So
yes, and for me, this company is very much aligned and very blessed. So you've worked with many women navigating real transformation. What's one conversation with a client that just totally stopped you in your tracks and reminded you why this work matters?
Yes. So I have two, but I will pick the one that came to my mind first. And I remember one client saying something along the lines of, I didn't even know that I was allowed to want more. And I was just like, what? Internally. Right. And that just stopped me dead in my tracks. But then I had to remind myself before I opened my mouth to coach, but it's because we live in a world that tells mothers to settle, to sacrifice, and to silence. So for her, it's natural, right? She's just like, I don't even see how this would work. And so with coaching, beautiful story. I'm always so honored to work with these women because I know that their time and their energy is being pulled in several different spaces and places. And she was able to land her first senior director role at a very large nonprofit. She negotiated a $25,000 increase. So again, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the agency that came with that. And those are just some of the stories where I'm just like, wow, like you are doing great work here, Khiara. Pat on the back.
Yay. So for all the women out there, yes, you are allowed to want more and you're allowed to be happy.
Yes. Yeah. Important one there. Yes. I tell people all the time about a therapist, but that is part of it. So yes. And it just what are the limitations that we're telling ourselves, right? And those are two very, big examples like, oh, I'm allowed to be happy. I can, and so forth.
So, if you were to think back, what did that moment teach you about what women really need when they're ready to rise?
Yes. So they need to give themselves permission, like themselves, not validating from, a boss or a partner. They need it themselves and internally. So you need to give yourself permission to be that ambitious woman, but also be soft and feminine, however that shows up for them, to feel and know that they can build wealth and boundaries, to be a very strong and committed leader, but also rest. Like women, rest, please rest. And more than anything, they truly need, I've seen most of my successful clients move the quickest, if you will, when they have that coach or that community or that mirror, something or someone that reflects back their ultimate brilliance until they start to believe it truly in themselves. And so, again, just give yourself permission to dream and to truly sit with yourself and say, what do I want? Not when my child, turns 5 and goes to school, not when the soccer tournament season is over. What do I want?
So before we move into the insider questions, someone wants to work with you. They're ready to work with you. They're ready to rise. They're a mother and they're ready to take that next step. They're not waiting for the kids to go off to college or whatever. They're ready to do it now. How do they get a hold of you? And what's the one thing that they should remember when they're thinking about if they should get a hold of you?
Yes. One, I want to say you are deserving. If you have any inkling, that is enough to just reach out. And it's a no pressure. I'm not a saleswoman. I only take on 4 clients at a quarter anyway, but I can be found. My name's Khiara Cureton and I can be found at Anchor Co. So that's www.ancherco.com. And we have a wealth of resources there. My email is Khiara, Khiara, at anchorco.com. So please reach out, even if it's just to have a conversation. If you have a quick question, I'm truly in this work not just for the money. Obviously, that's a part of the work that I do and my gifts. But I just want to see more women leaders. I was reading an article late last week, and it was just talking about the demise of women executives, and how they're just vanishing from that level of leadership. So please, please, please reach out, and I'm happy to be a resource.
All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Insider Circle questions for some deeper, more private questions. Those are folks that would just like to hear the answers to these questions. They're available to you. What's said, but they also get to have little tools and cheat sheets and check off lists that also come along with these answers. I really appreciate you being on Unsealing You. What are some final thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience, the unsealed audience that's causing ripples?
Yes. So I feel like we talked about so much today, but the one thing that I just want to emphasize is that you're allowed to want more, you deserve more, and you can do it with the right support and help. Whether, again, that's your community, a coach, it truly starts with getting clear around where you are, what's that gap to where you want to get to, and really your mindset, getting bold and confident in obtaining whatever those goals are for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. We'll have your websites and ways to get a hold of you in the show notes. So for folks looking for that, you'll find it there.
So thank you so much. This is a great conversation.
What a powerful conversation. Today, Khiara reminded us that negotiation isn't confrontation, it's alignment. Asking isn't about demanding. Ambition and motherhood don't have to compete. They can coexist when you lead from alignment instead of apology. We also talked about what it means to stop shrinking in salary conversations, in leadership rooms, and even in how we show up at home. Because every time you find your voice, you move closer to the version of yourself that's fully aligned in purpose, presence, and power. If you're ready to go deeper into this work, learn how to reset your energy, rebuild confidence from the inside out, and ask what really truly aligns with your values, join me in the Leadership Reset, my foundational program designed to help you lead without losing yourself. You'll find a link in the show notes below. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with a friend who's ready to stop playing small and start leading with alignment. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, your host, and this is Unsealing You, where we help you rise beyond limits, one conversation at a time. Until next time, remember, real alignment is when your voice reflects your value without apology.